Welcome back to the Scared Stiff Podcast. This is your host, Mike Calkins. This is my co-host, Scott Noyce. Would you like to tell everybody what movie we're watching today?
Do I have to tell them or can I show them?
Might as well.
We're going to talk about Gremlins. It's one of my favorites, and it's been a while. I named my dog after the main character. How do you feel about Gremlins?
It's a great movie.
Okay.
Love it.
So now that it's Christmas time, okay, we're going to talk about Phantom of the Opera, and it's actually not, the one that I'm wearing today because that's not a movie. There is actually like a Blu-ray of the 25th anniversary, though. That's actually really good. You haven't seen it, right? The musical?
One with Gerard Butler?
No, fuck that. No, like the musical, like the good one.
Oh, like in...
That is true. That movie's out too, but I really don't think about that.
Well, when you were saying movie, that's what I was thinking of. I don't know.
No. Well, there's there's a Blu-ray of
the stage
25th
play, right?
anniversary of like the musical.
Yeah, I've seen that for sale. I haven't picked it up yet.
It's really good. You should get that one. It's a great performance. I like both the leads. But yeah, we're talking about the one from Universal. It's the 1943 version, and we're gonna do another film from Universal too. I wanted to make sure that when we did this like horror-thon of like all the different creatures, it'd be different. But the reason we're doing the 1943 Phantom is that it's not the most well-known version. Obviously, the most well-known version is from 1925 with Lon Chaney, and this one's kind of forgotten about. So I thought it'd be cool if we talked about this one. I'm actually going to take that off now.
How did that stick on your face?
I put like little strips that like you put on a wall.
Oh, like command strips?
Yeah.
Oh, I bet that felt great coming off your face.
No, it doesn't hurt.
Okay.
I used to use like putty on it. You could use adhesive, but like that shit fucking hurts when it comes off on your face.
I bet.
I did like the Nightwing mask for Halloween. Oh, that shit always hurts. And getting it off like your eyes and everything when you're in the shower is terrible.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
I thought about it. I thought about putting that on, but I realized it's definitely not worth the pain and then having just little shine marks on my face when I took it off because it's not staying on for this entire episode.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Doesn't sound comfortable. So what's your history with this movie? Because mine is very short, as in last night.
I don't remember when I got so affiliated with wanting to watch like the Phantom movies. I think it probably happened around like 5 to 7 years ago. I started getting into plays in I feel like end of high school, going into college. I started making a lot more friends that were more into musicals and theater and everything. And I wanted to check out more like theater productions. And I always loved the idea of Phantom because I'm a big horror guy, and putting it on Broadway is just genius to me. So I checked out the musical. I loved that. At the same time, I had already seen Phantom of the Opera from 1925. I loved that one. This one kind of always was like talked about, but never like heavily. And it's got Claude Rains, who's fantastic in absolutely everything he's in. And I was always wondering, why is this not talked about that often?
He's already another Universal monster.
Yeah. There's also the fact that that mask that he wears is the one they modeled for the Broadway show, but they couldn't use it because I forget if it doesn't fit well when people are performing, or it covers too much of the mouth, so they don't have enough free range for vocals.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, we're not going to do it. And that's why you have ones like this.
Yep.
Because it just made it easier for performers. But I finally got to see it. I remember when I watched it the first time, I was really into it because I think it was on a big boom. And this has been my first or second time watching it after that moment. And that's my history with it. This is your first time watching the film.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about it a lot. You brought it up to me because we've talked about the Phantom of the Opera a lot, just in general. So like maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I watched the silent movie for the first time. Fell in love with it. It's probably one of the most incredible movies I've ever seen in my life. So I already have like my own perspective as far as what I like out of the Phantom of the Opera. So going into this was interesting experience, considering I know the general story of the Phantom of the Opera, and this is
vastly different.
Yes,
it's vastly different from the book. It's vastly different from most of the productions.
Yeah, so I was excited just because, like you said, like Claude Rains owns it in like everything. So just getting ready, like he's in 3 Universal monster movies at least, including this one. He's
including this one, yeah.
He's in Wolfman. He's the dad,
Wolfman.
Wolfman's dad. and he's Invisible Man.
Invisible
So
Man. Yeah.
he's awesome in all three of them. So I was really looking forward to watching this, and you let me the Blu-ray. I read the synopsis in the back, and I'm like, this does not sound like the Phantom of the Opera, but I'm intrigued. So I
So
watched it
the
last night.
the big departure of it is that they do give a very different origin to him. A
Yes.
lot of the things that follow suit in the story, which is about halfway in the movie, really, where it starts to follow more of the book. But not only is the origin of the Phantom different, but also Christine has two men fighting for her affections instead of just Raoul.
Yeah.
The stuff with Carlotta is the same. The main baritone for the theater was not in love with Christine. That Christine also her last name is Dae. It's not
Yeah. It's not
Dubois,
Dubois.
but
I was really confused when I was watching it. I'm like, it's not a rights issue. It's not like it's not like Nosferatu or something.
especially because Universal did do the 25 version.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there just confused why they changed the names on the characters. I mean, it's not a big
I
deal.
think
Like
they wanted to make it vastly different from the 25 version because
the
if it
Phantom has a
was the
name.
same thing, it'd be kind of a waste of time, probably.
Yeah, and like the Phantom has a name, and he's the central. Pretty much, he's not. Yeah, he kind of is a central character. Him and Christine actually, they divvy up screen time pretty decently between them.
Yeah.
You actually see his descent and all that stuff. Like it's quite different from what I was expecting.
Yeah. I would say the movie's not structured like a horror film throughout more than half the film.
Oh no, I was actually surprised by the the amount of comedy in the movie because it is often quite funny.
I think that's just because it came out in the 40s. Because I think a
Yeah,
lot of stuff in 40s, especially for horror films, they had a lot more comedic elements because that's when like the House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein films are coming out.
the whole
Yeah.
the whole dynamic between
Raoul and the
Raul and
baritone baritone.
why am I forgetting the baritone's name? But their whole dynamic is really funny. At first, when I was watching it, I didn't like Raul because he seemed like he was being kind of a dick, like he is in
Yeah.
most versions. He really grows on you as it goes on. But yeah, like their whole like they both can't go through fucking doors. Like they keep it's like Abbott and Costello fucking shit. Like Three Stooges kind of stuff, but it's really goofy and funny and in a movie that has a lot of like tragedy and some pretty really tense sequences that actually had me audibly gasp more than once. Those are welcome changes. They don't break the tone at all. They're just they pop up every once in a while, and it really isn't a big deal. And the great thing about it is that you can tell both people really care about Christine. Like
Yeah.
usually in love triangles, someone winds up being the asshole and winds up messing it up for themselves. And that's kind of not what they go for here.
Also,
I
for a
appreciate
film
that.
from 1943, I'd say it's one of the only films I could think of where you have two male love interests and neither of them really get the girl at the end, which is
Yeah.
vastly different than a lot of ways that would go usually.
Yeah, I found that a pretty bold decision at the end where she basically picks
Neither. She
no,
picks the theater.
she picks the theater, not so
Yeah.
basically the whole time the whole movie they're telling her, like you don't have time for you can't have outside relationships and stuff. So you'd think, oh well, she's probably gonna go with Anatoly. But no, her relationship is now with the theater, with music, with the opera itself. And I thought that was actually a really cool choice.
I don't think it's an easily recommendable film for when it comes to the horror franchise of Universal because it's so vastly different. It doesn't stick its neck into horror very much, except for the origin and different moments. There's a lot less killing in this film than there is for even the book for Phantom. I wouldn't say he's more sympathetic than most versions of Phantom. You could almost argue he's less sympathetic. I like the way where in the beginning of the film it plays off as not really like a love
Yeah.
that he has for Christine. It seems more like a how do I put it? It seems more like he really feels she's destined for more and he wants to unleash that. Like almost like if some musicians find someone that is a prodigy and they want to awaken the talent, it's not because, oh man, like I'm it's a sexual thing. It just seems more like it's genuine care for this person and this ability. And I think the ending kind of does ruin that. I don't like that much. If they stayed in that direction, I thought that would have been a much more unique way to take that.
I still don't feel like they commit to them it being a romantic thing though. Like I think it becomes something else. Yeah, I don't know if it's that that she's literally this, but it almost seems like, especially based on his age, that like he looks down to her as like a daughter figure. because
Yeah,
there's no romantic energy between them. Like that's
there's
not something
not
that they try
romantic
to do.
energy. It just comes down to the dialogue that I don't like when he starts to take her into the cave dwelling area from the opera house. It's like I wish that dialogue was different and make things a lot easier. I'd like to say that there is no energy from that and that it isn't like that because it's how I feel the entire film except for the end, and that does conflict a bit with it.
I actually like the idea though of him like looking to her as like a daughter
Yeah,
figure.
I'd
Uh,
prefer it, especially in this film. It makes more sense.
yeah, I actually like that aspect of it. Also, I think the most ridiculous part of this entire movie is the ending when they're in the cavern and Raul fires one shot into the ceiling and the entire cavern collapses.
The problem I have with the ending is
It's
that
just crazy. Like
no,
it's too
it's
much.
just like it's so contrived. Like they needed a way to finish it. Like they go down into the cavern, they're like, "Oh, this whole place is gonna collapse." It's like, "Oh, really? It's just gonna collapse randomly?"
Yeah, like
And you
we're
guys can perfectly follow the trail.
this wasn't set up at all. Like it was just like, oh look, this thing fell off, so now the whole thing is ready to crumble.
And
It's
if
like,
that thing's gonna
was no one
collapse,
checking to make sure the shit ain't gonna collapse
if
before you're
that
having
thing's
people in
gonna
there?
collapse, why is the opera house totally fine?
Yeah,
It's underneath the opera house. Like,
yeah, it doesn't make sense. So it's like when he fires one bullet into the ceiling, it's like they act like he shot the fucking ceiling with a howitzer. Like it
yeah.
just the entire the ceiling just starts collapsing. It's just
And
like, oh,
I think that sucks too because this film is such a secluded area. It's a small set where it's just the opera house you're in. You barely ever leave the opera house.
and all it is usually to like Christine's house and like one street.
The street. There's also the composer
The
who
most, yeah,
would have
the
produced the music,
yeah,
and those still feel like small areas.
yeah.
And I like that. Everything feels small scale. So when you have the ending happen, it's a lot grander of a scale. You see the caverns and everything looks very detailed, and they have big wide shots
It's
to showcase
beautiful.
everything. And it does look beautiful. I
It's
love that
color,
so
beautiful
much.
Technicolor.
I just
It just looks
really
stunning.
I really wish it wasn't taken away by the story just conveniently figuring everything out. And Claudine walks her through this tunnel and everybody knows exactly where it is. And it's like, you guys really had no trouble finding this. And
Yeah,
you're to expect me to believe that you couldn't find this phantom ever. Like you guys knew exactly where he brought her. Nobody
yeah,
followed her.
yeah. Exactly. It is weird. It's like they were. That's kind of the thing about the movie. Is like I actually really enjoyed this movie. Like I really enjoyed
I
it.
love it. I love
But
well,
like the ending
there's
is a little
problems
rough.
though. It you
Yeah.
have to say that a lot of things are glaring issues, but you can enjoy your time watching it.
It seems like the screenplay are like, I need to figure out a way how to end this, and I want it to end spectacularly. And
Yeah.
everything leading up to that is actually fantastic. Like the whole stuff with the chandelier. Oh my
I love the
god, it's so
chandelier.
good. It is white knuckle. Like it's terrifying. And when it falls, man, whoo! I scream. I thought like Raul was gonna like find him. Like
Yeah.
he was gonna find him before he dropped it. I didn't think that the chandelier was actually gonna drop. And when it does,
Yeah,
I'm like, wow! Like when like you said before, he's like he does a lot less killing in this. I'm like, a lot of people probably died when that chandelier fell down.
you
Like a
never
lot of
see
people.
it though.
Yeah, well, I mean, they can't show it.
Like the whole thing is that chandelier falling is the most impactful, memorable moment of the Phantom story from the books, or from the book singular and the movies and everything. It's like he breaks the chandelier, and that's the last culminating event before trying to steal Christine and everything.
Yeah,
But I mean, I can't understand not expecting it happening because this
because the
film
movie's
is
so
vastly
different.
different. It's
Yeah,
not
I
not
just
the
figured that
same
they weren't gonna
Phantom.
do it, especially because like I don't know, it just seems like maybe that era of Universal Monsters movies weren't gonna go for. But again, like their limitation, especially with like I believe it's at the time the Hayes stuff was going through and all that stuff. It's not like they could show anything. Like
Mhm.
they can't show anything both because of like limitations of the time and also I'm sure that they would get in trouble. But I just like when they dropped it, I'm like, wow, they went for it. It did happen. They did keep it.
It's also nice to see. It also helps that like they show wide shots of how big the chandelier is throughout the
Oh, every
entirety of
time.
the movie. So
Oh
when
my
it does
god.
fall, you can understand the damage it would cause.
The fucking camera moves in the opera sequences are so good. And especially the one where like they're gliding through the opera house, like the actual like the seats. They go they pull all the way out and then they go around the chandelier and then up into the box. The first shot, like that big first shot. And I'm like, wow, I'm in for a treat. And the rest of the movie just lives up to that. Like the visual, the actual cinematography, I am really impressed with especially for the era.
I think the thing that is so great about this movie, especially compared to other ones, is that it feels so personal. Like everything in the film feels very tight knit with connected to how a certain character feels or emotes. It's not like the other Phantom stories aren't personal. They're super personal, but they're stuck with certain characters throughout the throughway. And I really don't care for Raoul for most versions in the Phantom. I don't love him in this one, but giving two separate characters for Raoul and Anatoly, you get equal screen time with both of them. The
Yeah.
only characters that get more screen time than even those two is obviously Christine in the Phantom. But after you get to know Christine more, the Phantom has less and less and less and less screen time.
Yeah, I really like both Raul and Anatoly, and together I think they're even better because again that dynamic really shines, especially towards the end, like when Christine goes out to her adoring fans and he's like, "You want to go have dinner with me?" to each other as they're saying like, "No, I will not. I will not have dinner with the three of us. That's ridiculous."
It's because they're gay.
Yeah, dude,
They're
totally.
gay now. That's cool though.
Yeah, I dig it. I dig.
You
I
think they're
love
actually
that.
hinting at that though in the movie?
I doubt it.
I bet it. You could easily read it as that though.
You could.
It's still a comedic scene, and it's meant to be like, whatever. We could be boys now, but
Yeah, basically,
I think
to
you,
me, it reads like, well, I have a perfectly good reservation burning a hole in my pocket. Might
yeah,
as well go with you, I guess.
yeah. I
So
can see them hinting at that though.
I can see that being definitely a way to read that. I definitely don't think
Yeah,
that's an invalid way to read it. I just don't
yeah.
know if they were intending it. But again, like I don't know.
I don't know
Who
if it's
knows?
super intentional, but I think there's enough subtext to lead it to that.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you could that conclusion. Like I wouldn't say you had to stretch to
Yeah,
get there.
100%. I think
Yeah,
that's kind of
no.
neat. I think that's very risky for just the idea of that from
Two
1943.
two dudes just going to get dinner together at a fancy
Well,
restaurant of
like we
romance.
said, like they both don't get the girl. They go out to dinner with each other. It's
It's like they're mourning their loss.
like yeah, right.
They're like fuck.
I found love in tragedy, though. You know, just make a few kisses. Boys being boys, have some fun. But I just think that's really cool and risky to do for a film from that era. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wouldn't expect it, especially knowing how the film usually plays out or the story usually plays out. It's really out of nowhere. And I think that's kind of really neat. And that's why I wouldn't get mad that people don't talk about it, but I'm always confused. Like there's a lot to this version to love. The spectacle alone and just how ingrained it is to the musical aspect and the theater aspect is super passionate. And it's not like I don't understand why they haven't pursued that more in other versions, but I think it's a real lost element on why the theater is special in general.
I agree. I also I think a decent part about it is that at least from my searchings, because after I finished watching it, I'm like, oh, I want to buy this for myself on Blu-ray.
It's tough.
Can't get it.
It's tough. I
I have
had
to go
to
to
really
eBay.
look for it, man.
I have to go to eBay to get it.
Oh yeah,
And
you have to go to eBay to get it, or you can go and spend $140 on the complete package of all the Universal horror films.
yeah, it's out of print. So like I understand why people don't talk about it just because I feel like a lot of people just haven't seen it
More
outside
so
of
nowadays, yeah, but
yeah.
even then it wasn't very prominent. Because
No,
I
because
remember I was
people are
getting
talking
into
more
it.
about the silent eras
Yeah,
films.
and it sucks. You can't overshadow Lon Chaney's performance, but
It's still
there's
the
a
better
way to
movie.
respect two different films, acknowledge the differences, and love
Yeah,
them both in different ways. They did a film of Jekyll and Hyde in 1931, which is easily the most prominent and thought of film for Jekyll and Hyde, and they did a remake of it in 1941. And the 41 version is also fantastic. If that 31 version didn't exist, people would consider the 41 a classic in its own right. But
yeah,
just because the 31 does exist, people don't consider it as much. And that really does suck when you have another fantastic film covering the same property, but it's just not getting the same limelight. Why can't we just appreciate both films? Why does one have to get all the limelight and the other one doesn't? I'm not saying I love the 41 to the same level as the 31. The Jekyll and Hyde 31 film is one of the best horror films of that era, bar none. I like it more than I like Frankenstein. It's a fantastic movie. Everyone should see it. But that doesn't mean the 41 is just fucking second fiddle garbage. It's another amazing film covering the same subject matter.
yeah. It's kind of sort of like I mean, like not exactly, but thinking about how like people really talk about the Bela Lugosi Dracula movie, and then they forget that there's the Spanish version, which a lot of people love.
Yeah.
It's filmed on the same sets, but like completely different teams. Cinematography is completely different. A lot of people really like that version of Dracula, but people don't talk about it because it's literally just a special feature on Blu-ray. So yeah, it's sad because I mean that's kind of the whole thing with a lot of. Actually, no, I was gonna say like it's kind of funny that era of movies is interesting because nowadays if something gets remade, it's automatically everybody's mad.
Yeah.
Back then, it's like the remake wound up being the one that people cared the more about. So I find that very fascinating.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
I just named two times where the remake was cared less about.
Oh, I had that backwards.
Yeah.
Whoops. But still, either way, though, back then, like
The
the
remake
remakes
isn't an idea that kills theater.
yeah,
It's another idea that gets people to go to the theater more so.
at least I guess what I should be saying is that it's interesting that nowadays reboots are so taboo. Actually, yeah, I mean nowadays not. I mean
They are in a moviegoer's eyes, though. A general
nowadays,
audience gets mad at the thought of hearing the words reboot or remake.
yeah, nowadays it's a little bit less so just because it doesn't happen as much,
Yeah,
especially in the
I'd say
horror community. Like
early
it's kind of
2010s
stopped.
was late 2000s and early 2010s. It was a very consistent thing happening.
Well, now it's more like it's the year of requels where
Yeah,
they're just going back to old franchises and making a sequel to the original movie or whatever. Like they're doing that. Like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie that's coming out this year is doing that. They're bringing back Sally.
really?
Yeah, it's not the same actress. It's got a different actress.
What?
I don't know. I don't know what's up with that, but
That's
it's produced by Fede.
oh,
It's produced by Fede Alvarez, so I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna give it a chance.
man, I don't like the idea of that.
It's not the first time that they've done this.
Yeah, but like the whole reason the first Texas is so great is because these characters just randomly happened upon it.
Yeah,
I
Texas shouldn't be a franchise in my opinion.
It shouldn't. Texas should never be a franchise.
I love two. Like
Well,
I
two's different
love
though.
two.
Two
completely
takes it very
different.
tongue in cheek. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but like it should not be a franchise. It just straight up shouldn't be.
like
It's the only one of these slasher movies where I'm like, there's no reason to make another one of these.
oh, 100%. That's why like bringing Sally back is just a stupid idea.
I mean, I'm not gonna get
Texas
mad
shouldn't have a
until like,
Tommy Jarvis or shouldn't have like a Laurie
you're,
Strode.
you're right, but like
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I like I'll wait till the trailer comes out.
Oh yeah,
before
I'm
I
never going to
get
judge a
too
film
annoyed.
on something that hasn't come out yet,
But
but
I
the
agree,
idea of
though.
it does sound ridiculous.
As a movie, as a franchise that should not even have a franchise. I agree. So yeah, it's dumb. But basically, like these days, we don't get like straight up reboots and remakes anymore as far as horror movies are concerned. I mean, like it happens. You get like the Black Christmas one. You get like Evil Dead in 2013, but that's
That came out
8
in a
years
period
ago.
when that was common though.
It was
2013
kind of the
still,
end
like,
of
the
that
final
though.
wave. Yeah,
Yeah, it was kind of the end of it. I mean, like we get movies like again, it's requels or prequels nowadays. Like Leatherface was a prequel, and Halloween 2018 is a requel
how
technically.
many fucking times are they gonna make a fucking Texas Chainsaw movie though? Like
They've made a lot of Texas Chainsaw movies
I
trying to
know.
restart or reinvigorate that franchise and
I
failing
I
miserably.
just don't watch any of them because the idea of it just seems so asinine to me. Like,
It's kind of
what are
funny.
you doing?
It's kind of funny. I actually enjoyed the Leatherface movie, the one, the most recent one. But as a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, it's ass. Like it's really bad. But as just a movie, I had a good time with it.
Yeah, it's just being connected to the IP can really hurt it sometimes.
Well, it's just that they do the nauseating thing where they're like they dangle the character you think is Leatherface because they act like they're like you don't know who Leatherface is going to wind up being out of the people in the film. So they dangle the obvious person in front of you and they say nope, it's this other guy.
That's so cringe.
And the guy that it is just like that guy is going to turn into Leatherface. No, he's not. No, he's not.
I hate shit like that in general. It's no different than like the whole meta tropes or whatever. It's just, hey, you think it's gonna be this guy? Ah, swerve. I like Predators, but they did that whole shit with fucking Topher
Oh.
Grace's character. Like,
Oh my
oh,
god,
I wasn't randomly inserted. It's like, dude, come on, man.
that whole fucking movie. Though,
Any
is just like-
swerve that happens in a lot of films like that, especially films that aren't heavily planned out, it just feels so ridiculous. Like, you think I'm a fucking baby, don't you? You think I'm a stupid fucking baby and you're gonna smack me around and take my candy? I'm a grown ass man. I'll fuck you up. Like, you're not taking shit from this baby.
they oh my god, the Leatherface one was bad for the franchise, but you should have seen Texas Chainsaw 3D. Alexander Daddario is fucking Leatherface's cousin, bro.
Did he fuck his cousin?
No, that's not. They don't. They thankfully don't go there. But they do a whole thing
They're
at the
from
end where
Texas, boy.
she's all chained up, and they want like Leatherface to go kill her, and then he lets her go, or he lets no, he's
Oh
chained
my
up. She lets
god,
him
dude.
go, and she gives him his chainsaw to kill the bad guy, and says, "Get him, cuz."
Oh my god, dude. That's
It's so
so
fucking
fucking
bad, dude.
bad.
It's so fucking bad. There is a cool thing though. Like there's a sequence that takes place at a carnival. I'm like, I need to see that more in slasher movies. That shit's cool. More carnival style slasher movies.
Yeah, you should have more carnival scenes, like in fucking It Chapter 2, where they kill a random
Okay,
gay dude.
a good one.
Yeah.
A good carnival scene. And I said slasher movie, not
Imagine
it.
making a movie in 2019 where you're depicting a modern day setting in Maine, a democratic state, where you just had some random fucking guys just say, "We're probably gonna kill a gay dude." What?
I mean,
What?
I'm sure there's homophobic people in Maine, but
Oh, there's homophobia
they would
everywhere.
definitely
Like,
face
don't get me
repercussions
wrong.
for it.
I mean, homophobia shouldn't exist, but it does, and you can't get over it.
Yeah,
But that is such an
it's a
out of
scene.
touch scene.
It's a
If you
scene
filmed
in
it
a
in the
movie.
80s, I'll give you leeway. Like if you
Yeah,
filmed it in the 80s, fine. It's
exactly.
supposed to take place in that time period. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm more willing to believe
But
it.
that scene doesn't take place in the 80s.
No, it takes place in 2019,
So
and you have
that's
a
the
gay
problem.
couple just having a good time, and you have some random asshole. Which, if it was going to be the bully in the movie from the original, it's
That
like,
I could see it.
oh yeah, cool. Everyone saw that scene. They're like, it's got to be connected. It's got to be this asshole, right? No, it's just a random fucking homophobe. Like, okay, he doesn't get any fucking just desserts. He doesn't get any comeuppance. He just beats the fuck out of a gay dude. Gets thrown in the river. The boyfriend tries to get him, and then he sees the clown. And then I'm now to assume two gay people have been murdered. The bad guy faces no repercussions, and that's a great way to start my movie experience. Awesome. Thank you. Bye bye. Okay,
There's
sick.
a great way to kick
We're
off your
definitely having the same quality as the
40
first one, aren't we? Yeah.
good way to kick off your 2 hour and 40-minute long movie.
Yeah. At least it wasn't 2 hours and 40 minutes of homophobia.
Yeah, I mean that's I guess
It's
that's
just
always
2
a
hours and 40
positive.
minutes of fat shaming. Okay.
Oh my god, Jesus Christ. You know, I think I find it interesting how opinions on remakes has changed over the years.
I'm never against a remake. You know, these films especially, I always like the idea of getting something that was once great and maybe having a new version of that for a new audience. Like you can always have the affinity for that IP and say, I love that I had this growing up, but wouldn't you think it'd be great if your son or your little cousin or something could have that same affiliation with that IP? It's just not the one you loved.
Yeah,
Sometimes, I mean, you could always show it the one you loved. Maybe they're not going to hate it. Maybe they'll love it just like you do. A lot of times, my uncle could be a real pain in my ass, but the man has good taste in film. He shows me a movie and I'm like, you know what? He's right. I loved it. I'll literally be having the shittiest day, or I'll just be annoyed. He goes, I want to watch this movie. I'm like, no, I don't want to watch this fucking movie, dude. Leave me alone. It's like, I'm going to put it on. It's like, what the fuck did I just say? He puts it on. I sit there for like 2 hours. I'm like, that son of a bitch did it again. Like every single time. He's never once shown me a movie I haven't liked. And it's great to have kids have that experience with films that you love, but sometimes you can show a kid a film you love. And they're like, you're a boomer, dude. Fuck you. This sucks. And you're like, what happened, man? Did I get old now?
yes.
Fuck, my joints hurt. But what if they get a new film that's based on the IP and it's a little different? They're like, oh yeah, I kind of like that. That's pretty cool. It's like, yes, dude, thank you. You understand. Now watch the original, maybe. And maybe because they have some affiliation with that IP, they watch the original. They're like, that shit slaps a little bit different now. It's like, yes, it does. It does slap different, boy. Thank you.
It's kind of like it's not in the horror genre, but when I my dad tried to get me to watch Star Trek as a late teenager, and I was like, this is not good, Dad. This is pretty bad. And but this is when I was watching the this is before I started watching the Kelvin trilogy. I'm about to trigger some Star Trek fans because I enjoyed watching the Kelvin trilogy. So I'm like, oh, these are really fun.
Like
and
the
cool.
2009 and
the Abrams verse or whatever it is, Kurtzman verse, whatever the fuck it's called. It's called the Kelvin timeline. But yeah, like I really dug that trilogy. I mean, the third one's the best one, so it's not directed by J.J. Abrams.
Can't comment. I have no affiliation with Star Trek besides watching like random episodes of Next Generation.
Yeah, but the point around you get around to is like I enjoyed the hell out of those. those are like not most Trek fans do not like those movies.
The structure
Say for me to say for maybe the third one, because it's a lot more like the original franchise from what I understand. But I watched those three, and then I went back and I watched some of the original series, and I really enjoyed it. So it's interesting how perspectives change.
I'm trying to think about that for a horror film or something. Like I can't name many times where I watched a remake or a sequel of something, and then I went back and watched the original. I'm like, oh, I get it now.
Oh, I got literally my favorite. I watched the Nightmare remake first.
I didn't watch it first, but when I watched Nightmare the first time, I liked it, but I didn't love it. And then I watched the remake. I saw my buddy in theaters, and I thought it was cool when I saw it. And then when I rewatched the original Nightmare, it just made me appreciate it more and like the remake less.
It's like Nightmare on Elm Street is my favorite horror movie, and it's like I watched the remake first, and I really liked the remake when I saw it, and I watched the original. I'm like, nah, this is lit. And as it's gone on, I've enjoyed the original way more, and I've personally on purpose never watched the remake again. So
Yeah.
that's one that I know off the top of my head is I watched the remake for Nightmare first, and I watched the original and I loved it. So
I think that's funny because with a film like this Phantom, I don't see many people watching this one first before the 25 version. Everyone's gonna watch the 25 version first. I'd say nearly every single person in the world would at this point, if they're gonna see it for a first time, it's gonna be tougher to get your hands on this one. And I don't think many people are going to assume. Yeah, I don't think many people are going to assume this is the one everyone's talking about and watch this one first. But
yeah,
I do think if you did watch this one first and then watch the 25 one, you would respect both a lot more immensely.
Yeah, it's also like a lot of people are like, well, this one's like they pick one and they say, well, I like this one better, so the other one I don't even want to think about. It's just like, no, there's two different takes on the same material. Like you can enjoy both of them. It's okay to like both of them.
Yeah, they're vastly different movies in general.
Yeah,
the first one is a lot more structured like a horror film. This one's almost structured like a musical at times.
There's a lot of singing.
Musical comedy, like you said.
There was a point to me where I was kind of just sitting there through some of the musical sequences that felt really
elongated.
Like they could have probably trimmed them down a bit.
It's impressive. Some of their awesome stuff is impressive.
Like in isolation, those scenes are really great because they're filmed beautifully. The Technicolor makes it all pop really well. The sets are cool. Like it's super cool. Don't get me wrong. It's just that in this plot, it feels like the movie stops to have a musical sequence.
Yeah, and especially because this film is over 90 minutes during this time period, seemed unbelievable.
That's an epic.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like I said, I love this movie, but it's a film you have to acknowledge has a lot of problems, and that is a problem. But at the same time, because these musical scenes are so elongated and you have to stick it out, it really does make you appreciate that theater way more.
Yeah.
And that's why when Christine does pick in the end that she chooses the theater over the guys, it's like, I get it. When Claudine says, I don't want to leave the theater, I've been here for 20 years, this is my life, you get it. A lot of the stuff that is so intertwined to the theater and the people connected into it, you're starting to understand why all these decisions have so much weight.
Yeah.
A lot of the time it's like, oh, Carlotta's mad about Christine for she's supposed to be her understudy, but now she's shining. Oh, she's going to ruin her career. You're like, it's just a goddamn opera. What's the big deal? You watch this movie, you think about it. I understand why it's a big deal. She cares. This is not just an opera house. This is a way of life.
Yeah.
And when you get that taken away, you lose everything. That's how that Phantom was created. And that's awesome. The way they tell the story, everything is so intertwined to that opera that it matters. Using the opera house as just a backdrop takes away so much love and affiliation with it. Having it be that interconnected thing that makes everyone feel like they have to be stuck to it, it's a strong move. A lot of risks are taken, elongated music, a rushed finale. Some of these things don't hit, but you can understand the passion and what they're going for. And that's why this film is so vastly different and intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the sequence. Like, it's not like something where I'm sitting there like, oh my god, I'm gonna knock 3.5 points off because the fucking musical sequences are too long. Like, the musical sequences on their own, just looking at them, they're really good, like especially for the time, like especially the Technicolor in this movie really sells. I just love the look of Technicolor.
Yes, I
Like it's
agree.
just all the colors are so vivid, and oh my god, it's just it looks stunning, and especially with movies like this, that like musicals. Oh, it's so good, and I really appreciate. There's certain sequences that it makes me really appreciate too, like the final opera sequence where the Phantom comes out of the shadows and fucking garrots that motherfucker and takes his costume.
Yeah.
That's you because it's a held shot. It's like a decently length held shot of him just walking out of the shadows. It just fucking getting him. It's a really awesome shot because you can see him off in the distance and you're just like, oh no, that sucks. Like you're starting to get tense because it's like he's gonna fucking murder somebody. So that was really good. That stuck on my mind. Like I couldn't stop thinking about that. That was a really cool shot, especially it's in the curtains and all that stuff. Beautiful. And just that like the cameras inside the opera sequence at the end too, following people through the opera, like all that's really cool. And having him like dressed up as one of the people in the opera, like you're bouncing around looking for him. It's really cool. It's a really well filmed movie, and especially like I haven't seen anything else by this director. And like it's not like the Hammer movies where like Terrence Fisher directs like 95% of them.
Or
So
how
it's
in
like
the beginning of the silent film to like sound film for horror, Todd Browning did a lot of stuff too.
yeah, I did see when the opening credits were playing. I got really excited because I saw Jack Pierce did the
Yeah, he
makeup
does the
designs.
makeup.
Yeah, and I was like, oh man, we're gonna have a really cool looking Phantom makeup, and he looks pretty sick. Honestly, for the time
Yeah.
when he pops that mask on, I'm like, that's fucking gnarly. Like that looks really gnarly for the time. So I was really impressed. I was
Isn't it?
also very impressed that only the side of his face got melted and not the entire fucking face.
Isn't it? It's astounding that this film has the top mask where it covers both sides, and yet it covers the exact amount that would be used in the musical.
Yeah,
Like, isn't
I
that so weird and astounding?
I was just confused because I was expecting because he got slapped in the face with a full face of acid.
Yeah.
I was expecting his face to be completely fucked.
Yeah.
Again, like I bet you if they did that, they get in trouble.
Maybe.
Like I would assume. Also, I'm sure applying even that much makeup in that era was not fun for anybody, judging by some of the stuff that happened on like The Wizard of Oz. I hear a lot of that makeup for most movies that involve heavy makeup in that era were very unpleasant.
Well, especially for Lon Chaney, that's why he's an alcoholic.
Yeah, so it's like I can't really blame them for not going like full face with it. It's just that the manner in which he gets scarred, you'd think that his entire face would be fucking just gone. But whatever. That's a very small thing to talk about, like a very small nitpick. It's not even a nitpick. I don't care. It's just I find that interesting.
It is interesting. I just think it's so wild that they went with a mask as the Broadway show does that covers only this much, which is exactly as much that gets burned. But in this one,
They
the
do the
mask goes
whole-
over here
whole
and
thing.
you don't need to.
Yeah.
Which is even funnier that they were gonna go with having the top mask for the show, but they didn't.
Oh, another really funny like running gag in the movie is was he a stage manager? I don't know what his role is, but every time somebody talks about it, it's like, oh, how'd this happen? And he's just like
Yeah.
the fucking the
Anthony.
red bearded ghost or whatever.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the movie, he fucking turns over and does the same thing. The guy who literally has a big nose and a red beard.
Yeah.
That's just that's really it's mostly because the guy's facial expression after he sees who he's talking to is just so priceless. It's really I was really astonished by how funny this movie is, and it doesn't take away from the suspense sequences because there's some really suspenseful sequences in this, particularly like the sequence where Anatoly is chasing the Phantom through the opera, and they're running across all the catwalks, and they're just constantly, it's a big cat and mouse sequence, and at the end of it, the Phantom pushes Anatoly out onto the curtain, and he's stuck on the curtain. He has to slide down to get on the rope and swing away. That was really good. Like the stunt was really good, and that actually audibly got me to gasp when he got pushed off.
Yeah, I'm sure at that point, because you haven't seen the end of the movie, you think he's probably gonna die.
Yeah, because it's like he's a character that in my eye, like not somebody that's like important to the story that I know. So I just assume, oh, he's toast, and she's gonna go with Raoul at the end because this guy's toast. He's just gonna die. And no, he didn't die, and they're like, okay, that's pretty cool.
It's
But
intriguing the way it went around.
it's just a really awesome sequence because the camera work, it's just following them through the catwalks and all that stuff. It's really good. Again, like this is a very impressive film, technically and the performances. I think all the acting is really good. I mean, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but Claude Rains is just awesome in this.
It's
Like,
almost upsetting because he's really not in it a whole lot.
yeah, but like every time he shows up, he's fucking there, man.
Got
Like
a very
he's
subtle performance compared to the usual too. Like
yeah,
when you think of the Wolf Band, he's got a commanding presence but sympathetic. When Invisible Man,
he's manic,
he's manic, commanding, powerful, audacious. And in this one,
intelligent.
he's very subtle, reserved.
He only has an outburst
Very
like once or twice.
yeah, it's just once
Just the
when
once when he
thinks
strangles the guy.
music's getting stolen.
Also, how fucking like that to me is like I
That's not
wouldn't.
even powerful though.
To
The way
me,
he
that's
does it, he still
tragic.
sounds scared. I think that's the coolest thing about this performance. Because he could do a crazy, powerful, insane scene, but he doesn't. It really shows how this man understands that the character he's getting for is so vastly different from the other portrayals he's done.
Just like it's another one of those things where you can talk about how it's like it's just a bad day, but it's not just a bad day because his life is the opera. His life is being this violinist. And when he gets this tremor in his hand, he loses everything that his life is, he's strode for. And the only thing he has left is this musical composition that he's afraid is being stolen from him. So basically he's acting like everything has been stolen from him. So like he has nothing to lose at that point. When the sad thing is that it's not being stolen from him.
Yeah.
The
The
guy's
way
trying to get them to read it and pay this man and buy it from him. Like this guy's trying to get it purchased for him. He doesn't know that. So he strangles the guy. And if he just didn't, none of this would have happened.
it's funny
It's really sad.
if he didn't kill anybody in this movie, it'd be the most sympathetic version of the Phantom.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't deserve his comeuppance at the end. Unfortunately, he does. He tries to kidnap Christine, but at this point, you could assume like he's mentally
He's
just
just gone.
deteriorated way too far.
Yeah, I agree that like he does very unspeakable things, but I'll still say that I do have some sympathy for him. That doesn't
Oh,
mean that it's like
100%.
it's okay what he does or anything. Like obviously he like at the end of the movie, like he has to die.
It's not justified. It's not like it's justified the things he does, but it's understandable.
Yeah, it's like he snapped, and it's very sad.
You can't almost say it's justified killing the first person he kills because that guy's a piece of shit.
He's a cunt. I hate him,
Yeah.
so I'm okay with him dying. But like I don't know. Actually, I think my favorite scene is actually even before that. It's when he's at his flat and his what's his housemate or whatever, or
Yeah.
comes in and brings him food, and he goes and he sits down at his piano and starts playing solemnly. I think that's my favorite moment from him because it's such a subtle. He starts to cry.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's a fantastic performance. Like he's incredible in this, and that's another reason why it's like I'm really sad that people don't talk about this movie more. Is because like Claude Rains alone is a reason to watch this. It's like Invisible Man. Like it's just a different end of the spectrum. Like you should watch Invisible Man. It's just a great movie, but his Claude Rains' performance is fantastic. Same thing here. It's like it's a completely different end of the spectrum as far as what kind of performance he's giving, but it's so good. Like he's like an all timer. He's that good.
My favorite scene in the movie is the first singular scene he has, where he's with the maestro in the beginning, and he's talking about, oh, I've pinpointed the problem with the violin section. It's you. And he plays the melody of the lullaby, and he does that. And the maestro is very sympathetic towards him, but it's like, I can't have imperfection in a theater. And it's heartbreaking because his performance is perfect, but even the maestro is so good in that scene. Like they work so well together, and like you feel like the emotional conflict, but there's no way it could end differently.
Especially because like that he's been there for a while, so like they know each other. It's not like he's like a new recruit or something.
Yeah.
So it's like he's letting someone who he's played with for years go, and he knows it's gonna be devastating. It sucks. It sucks for both parties. And that maestro is really good throughout the whole movie. Every time he shows up, he's really good. Even at the end, like he's just really good. All the acting is really good.
I think Christine's probably the weakest actor in the film.
Probably, but
As
she's
far
still
as like a performance goes, because like
yeah.
the other guys doing comedy or whatever, it's like they're not giving a dramatic performance, but her dramatic performance sometimes can be a little flat.
But
It's
even
not bad.
every time that like Anatoly has a dramatic moment though, he sells it.
Yeah, I
And
mean the
same
other characters
with Raul.
like the stage manager and everything, like they're comedy through and through.
Yeah, they're just joke characters.
Yeah, but Anatoly has a great performance. Raul can be really good. He's not given too much strictly dramatic material, but when he does, it's pretty decent. But sometimes Christine almost sounds like blissfully ignorant when she's talking.
Yeah, she definitely seems like she's kind of like in this era one of those damsel in distresses where she kind of is just there
Mhm.
to be saved at the end. I think the girl does a good job with what she's doing. I say the girl. I really shouldn't just say the girl. That's not nice.
Yeah, she's older than you, dude.
True.
She's probably deceased as well.
Susanna Foster.
Yeah.
She's really good. Edgar Barrier is Raul. They're great. They're all great. That's the thing I gotta say about this is like there's some movies where I could definitely like pick apart the acting in the Universal movies, but not here. Not too much. I mean, like, yeah, like Christine's probably the weakest link, but she's still pretty good.
Yeah, she's not bad.
I was
She's
never
just
mad.
the worst
Yeah,
compared to everyone else.
I was never irritated watching her, especially like that seems like really backhanded praise, but
Yeah.
like there's some people who can really get on your nerves in these kinds of movies, and she doesn't.
Yeah. I
She
mean,
plays a very sweet girl very well.
well, Invisible Man's probably my favorite of the original run of the horror monsters and everything.
Yeah.
But oh man, the James Whale loves casting that woman to be like the comedic relief, and I fucking can't stand almost every
Oh,
scene she's in. Same with Bride. Bride is a fantastic movie, but that woman, she just chews scenery so much where it's like,
oh,
hey, this is so dramatic. You gotta cut it out sometimes.
actually, I should have liked her in Invisible Man purely based off of one moment.
Oh, when she falls down the stairs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's sad and very
Yeah.
fucked up to say, but it's almost like
It's a
she
payoff,
shows
though,
up. She shows
technically.
up in yeah, like she shows up in Bride or it was Bride, right?
No, she shows up in Invisible Man first.
Invisible Man, and then but
She's first.
I saw Bride first.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, oh, this lady is in both these movies, and I watched this one second. So I was like, oh, when she goes down, she's like, thank God that bitch will shut up. Like
Yeah.
she is hired specifically because she's irritating.
Yeah.
So me saying that I feel like is not that mean because that's kind of the point.
Oh, I'd agree.
It's the point of that scene. It's just like it's supposed to be a big hurrah moment. Like, thank God she shut up.
She's worse in Bride. She's much worse in Bride.
Yeah, I don't mind her in Invisible Man just because she gets a comeuppance from it. But
Yeah.
in Bride, she's just kind of just there to be annoying.
Yeah. He's a fantastic director, but he needed to cut her screen time. She was just too much sometimes. And you need to have some lighthearted scenes to cut tension in films, but man, she doesn't just cut tension. She just grinds things to a halt. And that's one thing that I can say in this movie never felt like that because it's not structured like a regular horror film. Like I said, it's structured almost like it's a drama at times. So when you have comedy, it's like, okay, it's just comedy to have some fun or whatever. And the duo never take away from what's happening on screen.
Yeah, it's never a situation where I feel like it's distracting from any of the drama.
Also, because the characters aren't just comedic relief. A lot of the times they are functioning supporting characters that have to give dramatic scenes. And when they're talking and being just regular characters, you don't feel like they're just going to goof around or just take you out of it completely.
Yeah, I agree.
So that definitely helps this film. Don't mean to break how these things are formed usually, but this is the first film where we really didn't talk about it beforehand because this is a first time watch for you. Even these other films, we've seen them before, but it was a good refresher to talk about them or whatever beforehand. But, I didn't know how you were going to feel about the film beforehand. And I would say rewatching it yesterday for me, I was almost saying, I don't love it as much as I did the first time, but I definitely understood why it had an impact on me. So I was very cautious to see how you were going to react to when you watch the film.
Yeah, I mean, like I heard you talk about this movie a lot, and so I was like, well, this is one to finally cross off my Universal Monsters list because basically I just watched the the first and second entries, if you're talking about Frankenstein, but just like the inaugural entries of the franchises. And then I just said, okay, well, I don't have access to the other ones. So, but this one I had no idea what to expect from. And I'm really glad that we did this one because I mean, it's just, it's refreshing to watch a new version of a movie that you've seen before, a new take on it. If you're gonna redo something, do something new with it. And I mean, that's exactly what they did here. And it's not like none of the changes are insulting. Like, yeah, they changed names, which is weird for some of them. It's unnecessary, but it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. It's like it's not like Christine being called Christine Daae instead of Dubois is gonna change my score. I don't care. She's still the same character or the same idea. And I honestly like the fact that we get like an origin for the Phantom. I mean, it's a little bit different.
He has an origin in other
Yeah,
renditions. It's just very, very different.
yeah, and also it's like it feels like you get plenty of time to kind of get into this character. So like, yes, you can't condone what he's doing, but some of the best villains are not the ones that you agree with. But I see a lot of people being like, well, I understand this character, so he's like a really good villain. And like, I agree with him. He's got some good points. It's like that doesn't make him a good villain. What makes him a good villain is him having good setup, good payoff, making sure that the character is understandable, a fully fleshed out person. Because it's like, what's the point of watching a villain if he's two-dimensional?
A fully realized idea.
Yeah, instead of a half-baked one and thrown in there at the last second. So I appreciate the fact that they took time to give us more time with the Phantom before he cracks.
Yeah, I think there's two ways you can do the Phantom. You either put a lot of build up into him and really showcase who he is as a character, or you leave it up to mystery. And the second one's the usual go-to option, but I think
Both are
having
valid.
having a switch like this where he is almost a fully realized, fleshed out character, and you have to learn about his downfall. It really helps this film. And
I agree.
you made mention about how it's not too often you get to see like a newer version or like a remake or reboot of a series like this. It's even tougher to have something like that be a reboot of a film, but at the same time be an older film where you could see these other techniques being utilized that are very innovative for its time period. Like, how often are you going to say, like, oh, yeah, I saw an updated version of this film I watched before, but it's in 1950 or something? You know, you don't
Yeah,
have that luxury a lot of the time.
it's like one of the cool things, like we talked about the Technicolor, and like this is all about like advancing with time and redoing movies with new technology. You know, they had that one sequence in the silent era version where there was color.
Mhm.
And that was mind blowing for the time. Like that was incredible. And just seeing that this entire movie's in this beautiful Technicolor just seems like the next logical evolution for that. So it's again like taking advantage of how technology has advanced, especially because like in the era, I haven't seen from this era that many color films. Most of the ones I've seen from the 40s are black and white still. I mean, they made black and white movies all the way through 1960.
Yeah, but horror films especially are still usually black and white at this time period.
Yeah, so like seeing one in color was really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool.
Seeing everything in like, it's not just like color, it's like really vivid, and it really fits the theatrical nature of the movie because it's all about the opera and how like just really tantalizing every frame is from a visual perspective. So it's really cool that they were actually able to like, they use that advancement in technology to enhance the mood of the film, because I think the movie would be different if we didn't have that Technicolor. I think if it was in black and white, like it would still be a good looking movie, and it's not like it would be technically a. I actually do think I think that this would have been a worse movie if it wasn't in color.
Yeah, I think the film is so structured around the color being
Vibrant.
utilized that it would definitely hurt a lot of the camera work and the shots in general if it was in black and white.
Yeah. I don't think it would ruin it. It's just
It would
it's just
hurt it
like,
though.
yeah, it's just like knowing like how much like they're really enforcing the love of the theater and how the theater is your first love and all this stuff. Making the theater so lavish and vivid and beautiful really enhances that. So
No, I agree. I think another thing that really capitalized on in this film is just how important the soundtrack really is by being a musical for
yeah,
some scenes. You know, by having it be so bombastic. You know, when he has his concerto, usually in the versions of Phantom of the Opera, it's Don Juan triumphant. is what they talk about, and it's his big bombastic concerto that he's going to showcase to the people, and it's important into it. But when they do this concerto, it's emotional. It's not just something he's done, it's something he loves, and like it breaks him down at the end when he hears it. And I think that's a
So
really
it's something that
heavy
had lived
thing that
with
you
him
can
for
only utilize
years.
by having this film structured this way.
Yeah, and it lives with him through these years. He just composed it over years and years, and also it ties him directly to Christine in how like a couple scenes earlier she had that scene where she was singing this melody with Anatoly. So it ties them directly together, and again, it really enhanced. Like they don't directly come out and say it, but they act like she's his long lost daughter or something. And the reason why she knows this melody is because maybe her father sang it to her when she was a kid. I mean, they don't talk about her having an estranged father or anything. They kind of like, to me, that really ties that together and makes that relationship more emotional, whereas it could have just been a damsel in distress situation. Whereas like, yeah, she still technically is the damsel, but there is more emotion behind why he took her and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Doesn't make it okay, obviously, but it's at least it's a more understandable motive
Kindred
from
soul.
looking through a prism.
Yeah, I agree.
So I love that, and I love how they treat the theater in the movie with the camera moves, the color, everything.
I think the funniest thing is a lot of films will try to like mimic black and white or whatever when they're trying to have people get into filmmaking or whatever. Like, oh, this is kind of like it was an older film. You can't have films nowadays mimic Technicolor. Whenever they do, it just looks so fake or like way too vibrant.
The closest it comes is like stuff like La La Land, because they make it like a on purpose. They do that whole thing in the beginning where they say it's in like Vista Vision or something
Yeah.
at the title screen, and they deliberately make all the colors very vibrant.
Yes.
Deliberately they do that. So like that's the closest that they've come, but it's still not really going after Technicolor.
No, it's
It's
not.
just going after very vivid imagery.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially with like the sets and stuff. Um,
That's just the coolest thing about Technicolor is that you can't do it again. You can't
Yeah.
mimic it. It is what it is, and like that's why films that are filmed in Technicolor will always be so amazing to see for the first time because you're not going to get anything like that again.
Yeah, I agree. It is a lost.
The lost art.
Yeah. The last time that they made a Technicolor film, like an actual Technicolor film, was The Godfather Part 2.
Really?
Yep.
That was in Technicolor?
Yep.
Wow.
It was like I'm looking through it now. Like New York Post talk about, like it's a very Technicolor is a very expensive process. So it's something that died, and they had other ways of handling color that were more efficient and cheaper.
You know what almost feels like it's in Technicolor?
It's like shooting digital is cheaper.
But another film that almost feels like it's in Technicolor a lot of the times is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, because he's totally going after that era of the 1960s where
Yeah.
like things were all in Technicolor. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. They're definitely going for that. I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, I know people don't love that movie or whatever. They have a lot of problems with it, but
It's
it's
a
such a
divisive
passion film. It's so
I
passionate.
adore it. It's up there as one of my favorite of Tarantino's work.
It's gonna be a real
Possibly
bummer.
top 3 for me.
It's gonna be a real bummer if he ends up finishing his film career and doesn't do like a true horror film
Oh my god.
because he's such a horror buff. He's so
Yeah, he loves
big on
horror.
the types of films and everything. He
To
can
me,
just
it's
go
amazing
on and
he hasn't
on.
done one. It's amazing he hasn't done one. He's
Yeah.
produced some real shit shows. Cabin Fever, fucking. Cabin Fever's not that bad.
I don't like Eli Roth as a director.
Yeah, no, I'm not even saying that. It's just like it's not a shit show. He
No,
did
it's
produce.
not.
He did put his name on Hostel though, and that, from what I understand,
He's
is
just a
shit
big
show, so.
friend of Eli Roth, though. It's just
I
like
know. It's just like he. Well, no, he didn't. That's not a horror movie. I was gonna say he did Death Proof or whatever. That's not really a horror movie.
yeah.
I would love to see him do something really sick from a horror perspective, because he does a lot of like awesome setup and payoff sequences where you could see where he could transition into horror.
Oh yeah, look at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Look at the tension when they're on the Manson Ranch.
That easily probably the most tensest scene he's ever directed is the scene in Inglourious Basterds at the beginning.
Yeah,
That is the closest thing to a horror movie he's ever directed. Like the Manson family scene is really tense, but that's horrifying. That's a brutal scene to start out that movie on. So I definitely believe he could do a horror movie. I would love to see that.
getting back on track, should say, is that I think this film has a lot of prospects that will get people interested, and I really wish it wasn't so tough to get. It should be more sought after and more digested because its origin its connections to theater is very unique. And that's something that it may take away from the horror aspect, but it brings more personality in. And I think that's something that could be easily utilized into other renditions and should be definitely seen by more viewers. And I'm glad that you did end up loving the film because it makes me feel a little less lonely in this world when it comes to this movie.
Okay.
Hey man, final thoughts.
This movie's great. I wasn't sure what to expect going into it. I just knew that you really enjoyed it and you talked really highly of it. So I was like, well, I'll minimum enjoy it. And I came away from it really, really liking it. And in the pantheon of the Phantom movies I've seen, it's not my favorite, but it really does help that they really went their own way with this in certain regards. I love it technically. I love the cinematography. I love the music. I love all the performances pretty much. It's just a gorgeous movie. Uh, I really enjoyed this. This is one of the ones like the first timers that I got to sit down and watch, and I really just was taken with it. And I appreciate you for lending me the Blu-ray so I could watch it.
Yeah, I would also say it's not my favorite version of Phantom of the Opera. I love, the IP so much. And I always find it very interesting and intriguing to get into it because a lot of them are so vastly different. But what I do love a lot about this one is just the heart and soul put into this version of it, taking things differently and really utilizing it. And that's why I say it may not be my favorite version, but I do think it's a must see because if you really want to understand the time period of it coming out, how to make things different, but keep it also enjoyable and also memorable and have a bit of the few things that made the original so popular in the first place, this is a great film to see. And I'm glad I got to show it to you. I'm glad you got to sink your teeth into it. Really said, I adore this too. And I just hope that more people can do the same thing.
That's kind of one of the fun things about this podcast is that for some of these are going to be movies that people haven't watched so much. They're movies that we can recommend to wider audiences that maybe haven't seen them. I mean, we're gonna talk about movies that are high end popular movies, but it is nice when we go off on something that's more obscure and it's like this is a universal movie. It's not like it's some tiny indie film that no one ever saw, but it's not something that's talked about very much. Until you brought it up, I wouldn't have, I don't think I even knew that this movie existed until you brought it up a couple of years ago. So it's kind of fun to be able to just illuminate those kinds of things to people.
Also, we're going to be having that more of a frequent thing where we each watch films that we haven't seen before. Like if it's something that I'll recommend to him, but he hasn't seen, we'll make sure to make that more of a commonplace thing on the podcast and vice versa, obviously, or even films that we both haven't seen before. Like we mentioned before on American Werewolf, we haven't seen The Howling, but we're going to watch that very soon. If you had to give this a scale of 1 to 5 fucked up half faces, what would you give it?
I probably wind up going with 4.
Sure.
Four half fucked up faces. I mean, it'd be a little bit over the line, like out of an actual like a 1 to 10 scale. I'd probably give it like an 8.3. So it's a little bit over, but stars, it's not worth me saying it's a 4.2 star fucking movie or something. But yeah, I really, really like this movie. It has problems. It's not like it's a masterpiece or something, but it is a very enjoyable movie to watch. And I can easily recommend this movie to people as long as I own it and can show it to them.
Yeah, I'd agree. If I could,
my friend.
I'd give it like 85. But I'll just round up. I'll give it 4.5 out of 5 Raoul pencil mustaches. And
his painted on mustache.
They both have fucking mustaches like that. I hate them both so much.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really, really weird.
But yeah, thank you for joining us. This is a film that I'm glad I got to talk about, and I hope more people can also get into it and try to expand their horizons when it comes to Phantom of the Opera. And thank you again for sitting down, hearing us bitch, hearing us complain, hearing us have fun, and hearing us talk about our love for these films. So tune in next time. We're going to continue talking about the classic horror monsters. In this next one, we're going to go right back to the core. We're going to talk about the 1930s mummy. So with that being said, get excited, stay tuned, and we'll see you later.